This is Yusuf.
And this is Ubi.
And this is our 5th episode of the Katamita podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a book that my sister has been delving deeply into. The premise of which is basically to spend all your money before you die on good experiences, as opposed to dying with a whole lot of money in the bank. So this conversation is going to be kind of interesting because I haven't really been exposed to the contents of this book yet. And Zubi's going to be talking about the premise of it and the content and then asking me my opinions on it. And so this will be really interesting, I think. It'll be a fresh take from me. and Zubi is the best educator I know. So this will be really fun. So buckle up. The book is called
Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And he is a very rich man. And so,
okay, goals.
Hedge fund.
Is he single?
No.
Oh. Sad.
But anyways, this book was just something I think I had heard about, and it's so contrary in thinking to what I've always grown up with. And I started reading it, and I was like, oh, I need to tell Yusuf about this book. And so I thought, well, wouldn't that be interesting, for us to just sort of do it in real life or sort of like live, having that discussion that I would have with him, and just also to get a chance to share it with you guys as well. So to give you guys, I kind of broke down the book into little subcategories and this is not how he has the book broken down, but just to kind of share some of the pearls, I would say, of some of the main points that he's trying to get across, or at least what I took from it. So this is going to be different for everybody, but what I took from it. And so the beginning of it really talks about the value of experiences. And so when he's talking about this, he really uses phrases like memory dividends.
Okay.
And so what he's talking about is that when you have a memory, so like let's say it's your trip, your last trip with your friends, you have the experience, you have the adventure, you have the great time with your friends. But then when you look back on that, hopefully very positive memories, there's almost like this continuing dividend that you benefit. You have that positive memory and the emotions that go with that, and so you sort of continue to reap the benefits from that experience.
That's such a interesting way of thinking about that.
But like, would you say that's true for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I think that's one of the reasons I go on these trips is because, like, not only is the experience itself great, but I'm able to look back for forever and not just the pictures but the memories and just the emotions attached to the trip. And so that's exactly what he says. So he talks about these memory dividends. So it's like, it's not just talking about your investment dividends that you get this money back, but these are experiences that you're creating these memory dividends with. And then of course what you just said, in a sense of that, starting earlier is better because you get to have those memory dividends longer, right? So if you've got that experience at 70 years old, you might have 10 years to enjoy that, versus if you had that experience at 25 years old, you have so much longer to enjoy that. He also talks about how having that positive experience is almost contagious in the sense that that sort of positivity brings about more positivity in your life, and possibly like gratitude, for example. I mean, he didn't really say that explicitly, but that's kind of how I took it. So again, it's not just that one experience, but it's the experience plus the memories and the emotions and the conversations you get to have about it, and with the people that were there, but the new people that you might have a conversation because you had this life experience. At least for me, that's something that I've really enjoyed about having experiences, is that then when I talk to people, to me the way I think of it is the more experiences you have, the likelihood of you connecting with somebody is higher because you may have a common experience or be able to talk about different experiences.
Exactly. And so the bigger your bank is of your experiences, the more likely you are to get to connect with more people. And for me, that's an important thing. What do you think about that?
I would say one thing that really stood out to me is this concept of what you're taking away from the trip. I mean, I've been on some trips that have completely changed my outlook on life. And so like that is a huge thing to take away, because it's taking away a different version of self almost, where
and you're still young.
Yeah.
So you having this now versus what if you had this at 60
right
is just so different.
For sure. Yeah. Because now, for example, like you mentioned, the trip I went on, let's say a million years ago in Greece with my friends, because I did that a few years ago, at this point, I've had the opportunity to travel with them again and again and again since then. And so that time has allowed, obviously, for more experiences. And like you said, if I had met them 10 years from now, that's
10 years less friendship you would have had.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So right, the relationships you make with those experiences. Yeah, I agree. And then, so we talked about, he talks about starting early with that. And then, to me, I think the biggest part of this that resonated, and again, because we are also reframed, our life has been reframed recently, and so like he does talk about that a lot. He says he starts the story with a friend dying, because that hits home, that hits close, and nothing really reframes your life and priorities like that. But one of the things he talks about, which was so profound, is like, why are we acquiring money, right? We do it because we want experiences, right? So I go and I make money so that I have the basics, of course, that the survival basics, but also so that I can take my kids to a theme park, so I can take them traveling, so I can buy them that toy that they really want, and have those different, so I can go visit family. And so we buy these things so we can have an experience. Or also, if it's just like, I want to have enough money so somebody can do my grocery shopping for me and I can Instacart it, or I could have somebody help clean my house so that I could be spending that time doing something else, and getting a different life experience. So it's so true. I think we all agree that why do we get money? For the most part, it's not to just be like, oh, I have this much money. It's like, no, I have this money so that I can do something, so we can be something.
For sure. I mean, of course, we have to consider the fact that so many people in today's day and age are
just trying to survive,
only having money to survive,
if that,
barely, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. I apologize. I should have said that at the very beginning of this book. This book definitely comes from a place of privilege. It is written. He does acknowledge that this isn't really going to apply to those that are really scrapping by, and so I do want. That's such an important thing to say.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks because it does exclude a lot of people.
Well,
but
I will say
it's the reality that not everybody's going to be in a place to even take this advice.
For sure. Even that being said, though, I would say that there is a transferability of the concept, maybe. Like, even the whole idea of, we always poke fun at it, but like, treat yourself, treat yourself. For me, it's like I'm buying something I totally don't need and deserve, and I'm like, treat myself. But like, if I were in different circumstances where, I was really paycheck to paycheck, then, it's like, how do you live your life making sure you're taking care of your needs and also still treating yourself so that life isn't just paying bills and getting by?
Yeah.
There has to be some sort of experience outside of...
He talks about that a little bit with and I didn't get into this in my notes, but he does talk about almost like what your time is worth. And even if you're getting paid, $15 an hour, he does talk about that a little bit in the beginning of the book. So I would refer you to the book for talking about people who are not like at a place where they have a decent savings account. But yes, thanks. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think
fine.
That's a huge sort of caveat
right.
to keep in mind, that this is coming from a place of privilege. This is coming from a place assuming that you do have some savings already. But yeah, talking about, acquiring money with the goal of having more experiences, but also so that you can have your rich life. Okay, so what is your rich life? And for many of us, I think we have to take a look at that and redefine it for ourselves. And so for me, I am shifting that mindset of, you know, how much money in my retirement account, my net worth, so to speak, versus like the richness of experiences that I'm having and the memories and the relationships. And that's something that I've been shifting towards. But I think I'm more mindful of it and conscious of it. And so that's something that I think this book has you rethink. Like, why are we getting the money? And if it's to be rich, what is rich for you? And so that's why sometimes they'll say that those that actually have very little money still feel like they have a very rich life because the way they define wealth is different. You know, it's not money. And then he goes on to talk about how so many of us are on autopilot, which really resonated with me too, because even though, you know, we're adults and we do have choices, we're not like forced to do things like we were when we were kids. Like, you have to go to school and you have to go where your parents took you. We have choices with what we want to do, yet we still put these chains and barriers on ourselves, and get into this habit of, you know, making money and
hustle.
Yeah, and for me, it's like so much of everything was like a checklist, you know, like I need to go through the motions. And so I am very much on autopilot, and he called me out on it. And, you know, I like that. I like that it got called out, and it really makes you rethink. So that's what I really appreciated about this book, is that contrarian thinking of like making me rethink things.
Yeah.
And so we are different generations, you and I. And as somebody who's in a different generation, I think you guys are probably more in, I shouldn't say you guys, but, you know, the different younger generations, I think, are more in line with this thinking. What do you think?
I think so. I think, well, you know, first and foremost, to quote my queen, Nicki Minaj, on Pink Friday 2, a song called My Life, in the chorus, she says, "When I die, I can't take the money with me."
Oh, gosh.
And that's tea.
She's my age, though.
She is. Yeah. She is. Okay. You didn't have to drag her like that, but that's fine.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Seriously?
Okay. Eddie Hoobst. No, but that is tea. You know, like, that is kind of how I feel a lot of people in my generation think, is like,
yeah, you can't bring it with you to the grave.
Right. And of course, like, growing up, listening to you and mommy talk, you know, there's always that part of me that's like, investment, retirement, save the money, you know. I feel like my perspective is a little shifty on this right now, because mommy just died and I got, you know, inheritance and stuff, and essentially made me consider, you know, do I want to go through life and make sure that my goal is simply to make sure my kids have money when I go, and make sure that there's this whole idea of, you know, passing on the wealth through the family.
Generational wealth.
Right, because even if I don't have kids, you know, I would then give the money to your kids, you know. And so kind of something like that. But with that being said, like, I do remember taking a class a while back, you know, back before I want to say pre-law, when I was still taking philosophy and stuff, maybe one philosophy course, maybe two. And one of the concepts was, in terms of, you know, economics and all that, this idea that it's ethical to die with zero money in the bank, having given it all away.
Interesting.
To,
he does refer to like
charity
other people
or whatever, you know, and so that's probably what I've like thought, probably since I took that class. That
stayed with you.
When I die, I'm you know, if I have money when I die, I'm gonna give it, you know, to charity. And so that's, I would say, like, yeah, this is sort of in line with at least how I think, probably how, based on my conversations with friends, how a few people in my generation think is, you know, this money is just money, and, you know, we have to spend it. First of all, a lot of us are not in places to be saving money, period. But
you don't have a lot of dispensable income.
Right. But, you know, when we do have some money, it's like, okay, well, do I want to sit here and save it, or do I want to go on this trip with my friends and make a memory, you know? Yeah,
so you're doing that sort of risk-benefit calculation each time. So he talks about the three... He says the three basic things you need to get the most out of life are health, money, and time. And I agree with that. I mean, I think it's a good, simple way to look at it. And I think that's just exactly like what you're talking about, that when you're in a different, like each season of your life, you're going to have more of one thing than the other. So right now, I'm 40. I have 2 young kids. I work. I'm blessed, you know, and privileged to have some money now. I've decent health. It could be better, which we'll talk about later. But and then time is a tricky one. You know, when you're working and you have your kids. And I know for me, like, it's something I've been struggling with so much lately is time, because it is really such a scarce resource. That you think you're going to have, but then things happen and you realize, like, gosh, what I would do for one more day. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're also the type of person who, you know, when you have any sort of time, if you are not filling that time with an activity,
I'm
then
insane.
You feel unproductive.
Yes,
you know, so,
I have a disease.
Yes, well, I wouldn't, but I would say, like, there is that, you know, there is almost a self-imposition of your scarcity of time. Because,
yeah, for sure. Well, we could get into what a hot mess I am in that area, but so talking about time now, so let's just talking about sort of his points when he's talking about time, is he brought up this idea of, you know, sometimes people will say, like, well, if you were gonna die tomorrow, what would you do today? And that's great, but like, none of us, it doesn't make sense to walk around acting like we're gonna die tomorrow either, right? Because then we're gonna just do a bunch of ridiculous things. But then he's like, well, think about, you know, okay, but what about if you knew you were going to die in a month versus if you know you're going to die in a year? That's a little bit different. And you think about that differently, and your experiences you might want to have might be different, and you would act different. And so I thought that was interesting. You know, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as you're going to die tomorrow, but putting a time limit on things is something that he brought up that I thought was really interesting. It's something you think about, but this was a nice reminder. So one of the things he talks about, like with your kids, right? You know, there's going to be, so I have kids, so, you know, this is naturally going to resonate with me, that like there's going to be a time frame when your kids like love this one particular activity or watching this particular movie or going to this theme park. Like we go to Dollywood all the time. There's going to come a time where there might, God forbid, be a time where they don't want to go to Dollywood. And I'm going to be very sad that day. But, you know, so like knowing that, then do I want to maximize that? Do I want to like go there more often? Or if there's a theme park that I know they're going to grow out of, like, I don't know, Legoland or something, or just whatever. If there's an experience that, you know, because they're only going to be this age for this time, you know, just kind of,
it's more valuable right now.
Yeah, so just keeping that in mind, because at some point, and he puts this in an interesting way, that phase of your life dies. He says you have many deaths in your life. And it might sound morbid, but like, it's like, but that's what it is. There will be a point in time when some of these things stop. They end. They cease to exist. And that is a good, sometimes you need it to be that dramatic to like get that point.
Well, if I'm being honest, like, you know, you're saying are we so dramatic to walk around thinking, am I going to die tomorrow? You know, I mean, we do think like that.
Yeah, well, we're in a phase,
we just went through that, you know.
For sure. Like
and so there is, but you're right, like, it is also a mind frame, you know, because if I really sit here and say, okay, if I die tomorrow, what would I want to do with the rest of my day? You know, the experiences are going to be a lot different than if I know I'm going to die in a year. You know, if I know I'm dying tomorrow, I'm going to call my family, call my friends. You know, if I'm dying in a year, then I'm probably going to go get a drink and think about this a little bit more. You know?
Yeah.
And
so I mean, I think that was just like an interesting reframe, or just like another way to put something that we all know. Like everybody tells you, like, oh, your kids are only young once, and you know, these 5 years are important, these 10 years are expensive. You know, these school years, you know, you should really spend time with them. P.S. You also need to be working, but also make sure you spend time with them. You know, like all those lovely, you know, mom guilt and parent guilt feelings we have. But you know, it just made me think about that, you know, to say like, gosh, you know, maybe I do need to I am a very frugal person. So I was just thinking like, I think there's times where I might want to just suck that up and like go ahead and pay that money to have some crazy experience, because thankfully, I'm blessed that I could probably make that work. It would just be painfully expensive, like Disney or something, you know, especially like a Disney after 5, you know, experience where it's a little less crazy. And, but, you know, looking at that price, I'd just be like, no way. And then I got to, after reading this book, I honestly was like, yeah, maybe. Like, well, maybe it's
there's a level of reasonability, right? Like, a trip like that, a Disney after 5, like, that's like a once-in-a-year trip. You know what I mean? Like,
honey, that's way less than once in a year.
Okay, well, my point is, it's not an investment you're making constantly.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
It's a big expense, sure, but it's a one-time expense for an amazing, hopefully amazing experience.
Exactly.
You know,
and you're paying more. Like, the whole reason I was thinking about that is because you're like paying for that experience versus if you were to go any day where you're like standing in line for an hour. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. But so that's one of the things. And then another thing that he said, which I really liked, was like when you go on vacation, you're going somewhere for a week, for example, you try to fit in like, oh, I want to make sure I see my family. I want to spend so much time with them, or the people I'm visiting, or this place that I'm visiting. What am I going to like, you know, try to fit in as much as possible in this week that I'm here? Because I know that I have this time limit that I'm here. But we take that for granted with so many other things, particularly where we live. So like right now, I know I live in this beautiful, amazing place, and I do try to take, you know, the kids and do things like that, but not as much as I could. And it really hit me when I was thinking about, I say this a lot, but like I wish I had visited and driven to Utah when I was living in Arizona, because it was just a couple of hours away, and it's gorgeous there. And now I'm like, really, am I gonna like get on a plane and take the, you know,
is it worth it now?
So that one really hit me, and I started to think about that, and I started to think I'm gonna be more intentional about that.
I think that really resonates with us particularly because, I mean, we live in such a beautiful place. I mean, we live, you know, in North Carolina, in the mountains. I mean, people literally, like you say, to your kids, people travel from all over the world to see this, you know, and we can walk outside and go for a walk.
We could.
Right, we don't.
I don't.
But we could. So you're right. Like, there is that, like, that was one thing you know, not that I'm huge on New Year's resolutions anyway, but that was one thing I wanted to do, is spend more time outside in this area that I live in, as long as I'm living here, and, you know, enjoy it.
Yeah, that's good that you've already been intentional about it. This was a reminder for me to be a little bit more intentional about it.
Should we go for a walk after this? Just kidding. It's like 1 degree outside. We're not doing that.
Sorry. This is the thing. I always have an excuse.
I know.
But it's like single digits. It's not happening.
T.
I know other people have it worse. There's like negative degrees happening out there right now.
Well, we're Floridian, so this is as bad as it gets.
So another thing he talked about, and again, this is like his outlay of the book is very different than how I organized it, but this is how my brain organized it. So the other thing that he talked about, in keeping with the time aspect, the time resource, as one of the activities he recommended, which I really liked, was making time buckets. So not a bucket list, but time buckets. And so what you do is you take your timeline you make a timeline from now until when you think you're going to die.
Jesus Christ.
And he talks about like, you know, whatever that might be. And he does say like, you know, there's like life expectancy calculators. So I actually did like 3 or 4 life expectancy calculators while I was reading this book.
Yeah. Well, both our parents died in their 50s, so
yeah.
I feel like that's as far as I'm going to calculate.
Yeah. Right. So that's the thing. I always had this idea. I'm like, oh, I'm definitely going to die like in my 50s or 60, you know, because the odds are not in our favor.
Right.
So looking at it from, you know, not an emotional standpoint, but, you know, more practical.
Right.
And they were all a little bit different numbers, but I kind of went with 80. So you go from 40 to 80, and then you put it into time intervals. So you could do like 40 to 45 or 40 to 50 years old, and you just do little buckets of time. And then what you do is you take those experiences that you know that you absolutely want to have. So really sit down and think about what is it that you want to do.
Like your bucket list.
Sort of, but like just, you know, the experiences you really want to have, and then put them within those time buckets. So I really want to go
so it is a bucket list.
A hot air balloon ride. Do I want to do that when I'm 75, or do I want to do that when I'm 45? Now, there's not really a right or wrong answer, but naturally, physiologically, we also understand that wanting to go skydiving when you're 80 is going to be a different experience than when you're 40. And so we'll get into that when we talk about health, but you know, obviously keeping in mind that some things are going to be a better time to do it than others. When you're doing this, though, he says not to think about money and cost. Do not factor in the cost when you're doing this. Don't let that sway you. Just put in the experiences in that time frame. And so I thought that was a really nice exercise he recommended, and something I definitely want to do. I started doing it. And then the other point he made, and this is the last thing I'll say kind of with what he was talking about in the time areas, is that it's better to be bolder when you're younger. And as a person who's risk averse, that was hard for me to hear.
I was just about to say, this sounds like investing. Like, you want to be more
aggressive.
Yeah, you want to have higher risk when you're younger.
Exactly. And that's because you recuperate faster, right? You recuperate physically faster from when you jump off of something. Like our kids, you know, I see my kids acting crazy, and I'm like, can we not go to the emergency room today? You know, but they get right back up. You know, they knock themselves down, get right back up. Whereas if I did that, it would be a sad, sad story. But you recuperate faster, you know, and you can take those risks when you're younger, even though society and big sisters probably tell you otherwise. So I know for me, you know, being that, you know, first daughter and going through the checklist and doing all of that, as I was reading this book, I was like, gosh, I almost feel guilty that how many times have I like lectured you or this or that, you know, and like be responsible and get this done and do that, and, you know, go through the motions of, you know, next. And instead, should I be telling you to like take off a year and go travel the world? And so that was really why I wanted to do this, is I just felt like I needed to talk to you about this.
Well, I don't think you need to feel guilty. You know, ultimately, like, you are
mom guilt.
Yeah, you're my that's exactly what it is. You're my second mom. You know, you were just saying what mommy said or would have said. And you know, I hear you. Fortunately for me, I kind of
don't care what
ignore you anyway. Yeah, just kidding. But
not really.
But no, like in that, you know, let's take it back to like a year ago, you know, where I was between work, you know, I quit my job and moved somewhere else, and I was just I fortunately had money saved up that I was able to just not work for a little bit. You know, and I definitely remember the pressure that you and mommy were giving me, you know, the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to start working again. Just do something. Right. And I think there's multiple facets of this. The one part is, you know, while you might have said, you know, maybe you should have encouraged me to travel for a year or something, you know, like, I took my time off, you know, like for better or worse, even though it maybe wasn't the healthiest coping mechanism to rot in bed for some time, you know, I got my time off, and then, once I started, you know, kicking back up again, you know, mommy passed, and that really lit the fire under my butt to, get up again, you know, and so I think that
I just say that that's amazing.
Oh.
You know, because most people would be like the opposite. But not that you can ever make anything good out of anything, and not that you should or, you know, ever feel the need to, but I just have to point out that is amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you. It was very intentionally done, and it's a very conscious effort every day to get out of bed, but it's life.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I think that you don't have anything to feel guilty for in reminding me to be practically responsible, you know, by the standards that we know and have been raised with, you know. Even when I wasn't working, mommy would always say, you know, like, this isn't how I raised you to not be ambitious, you know.
Because she was really ambitious. And that's, see, I got a lot of that.
You
like,
did.
That pressure to be,
sure.
like, constant, like, you know, sitting on the couch was like, well, what are you doing?
Right.
What do you...
Whereas for me,
you know,
like, after I broke as a person after law school and all that, like, I was like, I have no intent to be anything beyond mediocre in life as long as I am comfortable and happy, you know. Of course, you know, that's not necessarily true, because I do try, you know, but that's where I was then, you know.
And I think, like, again, we could get sidetracked off of this, you know, but you know, where that stems from, some of that pressure, but anyways, I think it just kind of goes again to, you know, the concept of this whole time thing, and, you know, doing things when you're younger versus when you're older, and, you know, the regrets people have on their deathbed, and they always say, you know, I wish I would have taken more risks, I wish I would have been my true self, and this and that, and that's just something that's a common theme that a lot of people hear if they're near somebody on their deathbed. And so I just had feelings about it, and I was like, oh wow, you know, like, maybe it is a little too late for me, but, you know, I need to change maybe my mind frame on that, and just be more open-minded.
Sure. Well, that's something anybody can benefit from, so.
Yeah. So the next sort of like part of that triad is, we talked about the time, and the next one is health. And this is another one that was like, oh man, like, okay. So, you know, he talks about that it's really hard to find that sweet spot where you're gonna have all three of those things perfectly in balance. I mean, I'm probably in that frame right now of where things are like more balanced right now, but you know, he talks about how, like, overall health is gonna be more valuable than money, and that is true, because it doesn't matter how rich you are, you know, and this, like, I'm trying not to get emotional, but, like, if you're in that ICU bed, money doesn't fix you.
Right.
Money doesn't fix you if you have, you know, if you don't have your health, it's not going to fix you. Now, you can do things with your money to improve your health, but if you have poor health, money can only do so much.
Right.
And so he talks about, you know, when you have improved health, everything improves in your life. And that your ability to enjoy those experiences that we are talking about is going to depend a lot on your health. You know, can you go and if, assuming you want to be doing these things, if you want to be skiing, if you want to be skydiving, if you want to be doing, you know, hiking a beautiful area and playing sports with your kids or whatever, that you have to admit that that's going to depend on your health, and, you know, that's going to be different.
I hear you. Yeah. And I think I totally agree with this. I think where I'm getting maybe caught in the nuance of it is often like health is the thing that suffers when you don't have either money or time. When you don't have money, for example, and you need to feed your family, you're going to spend that money on the cheap fast food or whatever it is that's going to feed their family.
Dense. Absolutely.
Yeah. Or if you don't have time, if you're working all the time, you don't have
time to go on a walk
to exercise. Of course I do always hear the whole like, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, no excuses, yada yada, but that's just not realistic, I think.
That's a really good point. That there's definitely like, again, I think it goes back to like the book is
right, assuming
the book is geared towards people who have some savings, some disposable and dispensable income, but those are really good points. And I think like it's like we say even in healthcare that like the people who work in healthcare are sometimes the sickest, because they're just taking care of other people. And you think about our nurses that are just phenomenal, and they don't have time to take a bathroom break. They're on their feet all the time, and they are often taking care of their patients at the detriment of their own health,
right?
And we see that with physicians and other healthcare workers. You see even suicide risks can be higher with certain healthcare workers. You see pharmacists, are at a higher risk of abusing narcotics than maybe other people. So there's just definitely that risk of like, it's easy to say, but very hard to do. So I hear that. I agree with that.
And there's other types of health, like not everybody has the same body, or, not everybody is able-bodied in the same way.
Well, I think what he's talking about is like to be able to physically participate in experiences.
Right.
So looking at health from longevity, if that's what you're interested in, and being able to physically... So how I took this, and the reason this hit me, is because I literally hate to move my body. Like, I wish I was joking.
Yeah.
It's sad. I've always had this sort of like fatigue and tiredness and like lack of any motivation to get up. I've had everything checked. I honestly wish I could blame it on something, but I don't know what's wrong with me. And of course people are like, well, if you move your body, you'll get more energy, and then you'll, and I'm like, yep, all that makes sense. I get it. But when I was even thinking about this trip to Italy, I was kind of scared. I was like, I know I'm going to have to do a lot of walking. Am I up for that? Like, yes, I should be. I'm 40. Like, I'm 39. Like, I should totally be able to do this. But me, knowing my limitations and knowing my, like, laziness, I was scared. I was like, am I going to be able to get the most out of this trip? With this in mind? And luckily I did. Like, I walked like 20,000 steps and like loved it, and it was wonderful. But that's what I'm talking about with this. Like, if I go somewhere and you go to like Machu Picchu and you want to like hike it, or you go to Sedona and you want to like hike that, but like, is that something you can do?
Right.
So I think that's what he's getting at, and not like body shapes and sizes. We're not getting into that, but what are you physically capable of?
Right.
Whatever that means and looks like, and all of that. And so for me, I know that is a limitation. Like, honestly, that's a limitation for me. I might look like I'm average size, but...
And what I was talking about is being able-bodied, not about sizes and shapes so much, but, like, how does somebody who maybe has an amputated leg... like our mom maybe would have had if she survived. How does she then go about planning this trip in a way where maybe the rest of her body is healthy, but
well, and there's definitely, I agree, there's definitely nuances,
there's a little nuance there. Again, I haven't read the book, but
he doesn't really get into those nuances or those specific
That's what
situations.
I was gonna say, basically, is that based on how you've been talking about the book so far, it kind of seems like he's starting at a standpoint of assuming you have money, assuming you're able-bodied, assuming you are,
you don't have a physical disability that would limit you,
which
like,
is,
from the status
that's
quo.
fair, because, I mean, unfortunately, like, in society, that is how most things are, is, like, they're designed for, the average,
I think that's a really good
person.
point. I mean, that's why I love having this discussion with you, because this is something that maybe people are not going to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, but like, how do we take this lesson?
Health? Right.
How do we take this lesson and how does somebody that has a physical limitation that they truly can't buy their way out of or do anything out of and still get to have those experiences?
Right. Let's say they have the time. Let's say they have some money, but what they're lacking in, you know, something else.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I mean, so I guess
sorry to sidetrack us. That's just what I was thinking.
I think that's a good point. It's like we defined what is rich, you know, what is health, though. I mean, that is a good point that, you know, what is health and whatnot. But for me, I think what really hit was that whole idea of, it was just a lot of thoughts went into my head. Like, our mom was just, like, always really, like,
on it about her health.
It was so important to her, and it was so important for her to talk to us about that and model it, and she did. She was an excellent role model. She exercised in front of us. She was always exercising, taking care of her health, eating healthy, salads all the time, like all of it. And then boom, you know, she gets hit by a drunk driver and dies. And so there's a part of you that's like, well, what was it all for, you know?
Right, exactly.
And your brain, like, I can't help it, but I'm just like, well, what's it all for if you're just going to get killed by somebody who's you know, reckless. And then there's the other part of me that's like, well, you can't do that. You can't be that emotional. You still need to do the best that you can. Right. Control what you can control. Be there for your children so that you can see them graduate. So you can go on your trips.
It's definitely a double-edged sword because I definitely remember having conversations with mommy where I was like, okay, like, I get it. The salad is healthier than this cookie I'm eating. But the cookie tastes good, and, you know, like, we're all gonna die someday anyway. That's literally what I would say to her, which is crazy, you know, because she, the healthiest woman I know, who, if she hadn't gotten killed in a car accident, I think probably would have lived till her 80s or 90s. Because she was so healthy. There's that, but then there's also the other side of it, which is if she wasn't as healthy as she was, would she have made it to the hospital to say bye to all of us? Would she have been able to hold on for so long?
I think that was sheer will on her part because she was just so mentally strong. But yeah, it could have been like physical too. But actually, I don't think this is my take, Zuby's take. I think it was her mental resilience that kept her alive. Because everybody said they were like, we don't know how she made it. Yeah. But I mean, we're getting on that sidetrack. But like, I think there's definitely like you have that experience too, where you're like, is this cookie worth the 30 minutes of the treadmill? Right. You know, and sometimes I'll do that. I'll be like, is this worth the calories, you know? And sometimes it is. It's worth it. And sometimes it's just not. So I think, again, it's one of those things, you know, time versus experience. So, again, is the experience of having this delicious tasting thing that is, like, nothing like I've ever had before, and I need to have it because it's so unique, and I'm never going to have it again. Or, you know, something that you're just taking for granted. Yeah. And on autopilot, binging food.
That's a good way to put it. Just taking for granted on autopilot.
Yeah. And, you know, eating Hershey Kisses like 10 in a row. Not like I've been doing that, but. I've been doing that.
Girl, because once that Christmas candy went on clearance.
I know, right? So just, I think that's just, it's an interesting way that you can, like, apply this to different parts of your life. And so I thought that was interesting. And really how I had that struggle in my head with that, you know. But overall, I was like, God, I know I need to invest in my health. I know that I need to, like, take care of my health better. I know that's one thing I could do to honor her because it was so important for her.
Especially now that she's not here to badger us about it.
To, like,
it's
get
almost,
on us
you know,
about
it's almost the same as how I changed after she passed and started getting up and getting out of bed. It's that sort of thing. It's like... Maybe she's not here to remind me anymore, but
she's still with you.
Exactly, and it's how I can honor her by doing it of my own accord in her memory.
Yeah, yeah. So, that was the health part of it. And so the next part of that triad was the money, of course.
Oh.
And so the money part, you know, some of the things he talked about was, you know, using those longevity calculators to get your average life expectancy. And there's several different calculators out there. Some even show, like, you might live to 80, but you'll probably be like healthy till 65, which I thought was really interesting. So I did a couple of those. And I thought that was interesting, and I recommend doing that. I know, like, some people might be like, oh, no, whatever. But it's like, you're going to die. One thing I can guarantee is you're going to die. So looking at it from an objective point of view, again, just trying to be objective about it. And one of the other things he talks about is that, you know, a lot of people often argue, well, what about the kids? What about the kids? And, you know, almost making it sound like, oh, I'm so selfless, you know, saving all this money for my kids so I can have this generational wealth to pass on. And he's like, yeah, that's great. Give money to your kids, but give it to them when they need it. So he, you know, talks about some studies and when most people get their inheritance, and oftentimes it is like 60 or older.
Wow.
And he's like, what are you going to do with that money when you're 60?
Right.
When you know, and then again, he's got stories in there and surveys in there that people could use it when they're 26 to 40.
Right.
So
also, just side note, can't imagine having parents into my 60s.
Yeah,
What's that
I
like?
know. So sad. But like I thought that was a really interesting thing that he talks about. Like, that's when you need the money. That's when, you know, one of the stories he talked about is this woman who was like struggling to pay her bills, had children, on the edge of poverty. That's when she could have used her money. Instead, she got this windfall of money at like 60 something when she had already sorted it all out and done the struggle. And I mean, there's going to be people out there that are like, you know, struggle.
Strap yourself up by your bootstraps.
You know, but like,
the American dream is to struggle.
I don't think people really want their kids to struggle.
Right.
I don't know. So anyways, I mean, that's something you need to probably do some introspection on and think about that. But he says, you know, you're not generous when you're dead. It's not even your money anymore. Somebody else has decided whose money it is and who's getting it. So you're generous when you're alive. So give that money to them when they need it. And for the most part, that's when they are 26 to 40 years old. Now, if they're too young, obviously you're not going to give it to them, you know, but you could set it aside so it's like earmarked as theirs. And so you play with your money. But if you really want to give it to them, then have it set aside for them. And the same thing with charities. Like, charities can always use money now, not 20 years from now. They can build that well now. They can give a scholarship now. And so I thought that was interesting because it does make you think about, what is my real intention when I'm giving money? Is it that, am I really that generous? Or am I just giving the leftovers because that I didn't know what to do with? And so he's like, if you want to do that, if you want to give money to charities and your children, then be intentional about it.
Don't let it be an afterthought, right?
Yeah, be intentional about it. Put it aside. You have say over it. You decide so much more about it. They can use that money to buy their first house or whatever. And then you have that money for yourself to live the way you want to live it and not have to worry about setting aside money for your kids because you've already done it. And so he does talk about like other, you know, financial vehicles like annuities and long-term care insurance and, you know, things like that, you know, maybe other financial people would disagree with, but I'm not going to really like say my opinion on any of that. But he also talks about things like sometimes there's savings formulas out there, like, you know, you should spend this much and save this much. You know, I think there's one that's like 50 30 20, but he's like, talks about how that is not a static thing, and that's not something that's going to be the same throughout your life. And so you need to shift and reassess that as you age. How much you should be spending and saving. And his argument is you should be spending more when you're younger and saving less, and then actually saving more towards the tail end of when you think you're going to retire. So I thought that was interesting. And then he also had this other idea of looking at yourself as like, what's your personal interest rate and what is your hourly rate? So like, would you rather spend an hour grocery shopping or have somebody do that, you know, and pay the extra to have it delivered to you?
Basically, what's the utility I get out of this activity versus something else?
And then he does bring up this formula. So if people are wondering, like, well, how do I know how much I need to retire with? Because, you know, this person told me I need 500,000. This person told me I need 300. This person told me I need $1 million. And he said that, you know, it's actually quite a bit less than most people think. So one way, he said, to find out just like the bare minimum of what you would need is to take a look at what you need in a year to survive. Like the basics, like food, utilities, housing. What is that amount? And then for 1 year, and then times that by 0.7, and then times that by the years you think you have left to live. So again, you look at that calculator. Let's say I have 40 more years. Then I would say, let's say I think it's, you know, $20,000 to live 1 year times 0.7
times 40 years.
Times 40 years. And that's like your bare minimum that you need to have. So that gives you like that anxiety in you that might be rising.
Right.
You know, as you're like listening to me talk and reading this book, it gives you like a number, and it just helps put that anxiety to rest a little bit. So I thought that was interesting.
And bold of you to assume the number isn't going to give me anxiety.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it could maybe for some people. But, and then again, like that's also going to depend on like where you're living, right? Like if you're living in New York City versus someplace that's cheaper to live in. So, you know, again, and that might factor in your decisions too about like where you're going to retire. So, I thought, again, it was just another good concept because I am often on autopilot. You know, I listened to so many like financial gurus early on and started, you know, tried to do all the right things, save early and use compound interest and, you know, pay off of my debts and save for retirement and this and this and this. So it's just, and I'm very frugal. I have a scarcity mindset issues. So this was this whole book, you know, just to sort of like tie it up, is like, it was really uncomfortable, and it was such a mindset like shift for me.
Mind shit.
Yeah, or some people would say another word, but like, you know, it really was, and so I just thought it was something worth talking about. And like,
I'm glad we talked about it, and I'm glad we used this vehicle to talk about it, because I'm sure there's a lot of other people that think about money as just something to save up for retirement for, or just maybe on the opposite end, just spend, you know.
Yeah, he talks about there's like that parable of like the ant and the grasshopper, and, you know, one saves and then, you know, but he doesn't enjoy his summer because the ant is so busy saving up for the winter, and then the grasshopper doesn't save up enough and then like dies because he didn't save up. So he's like, let's try to be in the middle of those two things, or like be a little more grasshoppery, but you know, smart about it.
Ultimately, like, I think taking away from our conversation, it's just like finding that reasonable level of how do I balance living life, which I need to do, and still enjoying life. And, you know, in a way that's practical and responsible. And
and he's got some like apps on his website that you can use to like help calculate. So if you want, like, if you're like me and you want tools and you want numbers and you want objective data, I thought those were really interesting. And so I would urge you to read the book, you know, just read it. I got it from the library because I am cheap, so.
Support your local library. Get a library card even if you don't go, so that your library gets money.
The library is amazing. It's like the one place you can go where nobody expects you to spend money. You can just chill, right? So get the book, read it, go to his website, you look at the apps. Let us know what you think about this. Is it crazy? Is it irresponsible? Is it mind-blowing? Is it going to change the way you think about things?
And what's your current thinking on how you should be spending or saving money compared to maybe this conversation? So please leave some comments, or you can call into our number, our Google Voice number that'll be left in the show notes. But other than that, this has been our 5th episode of Katamita. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope to see you again next time. Bye. Mwah.